Hi, and welcome back to Pay Down Debt Solutions. I'm Jen, and I want to welcome you back, and I want to talk to you guys today about DTI. So DTI is your debt to income ratio. So we're going to talk today about good debt versus bad debt. We're going to talk to you about your debt to income ratio and how that may affect you, especially when it comes to velocity banking. And then we're going to talk to, and then I'm going to talk to you about somebody that I was conversing with on Facebook who said she's unable to get a personal line of credit. She was denied by her credit union, and she has a credit score of 780. So I want to talk to you guys about why that might happen. Love this situation with this woman here, and I love it because you guys, I do my best to bring you guys solutions, right? And she had a question on a video I did the other day when I was talking about maxed card strategies and how those maxed card strategies, you can do a split card strategy. And she was confused because she said, I don't understand how overpaying my credit card or putting more debts on my credit card than the payment is as going to help me pay it down. And she's right, it's not going to. So I need to do a better job explaining that. And I did explain it further on in the video, but I realized I didn't do a perfect job with that. So I always want to better myself. And, I love that you guys make these comments, because if I can't bring it to you and explain it to you in a way that you understand, then I haven't done my job, right? So if you have a split card strategy that you're going to do, and you're going to be running something like the maxed card strategy with velocity banking, then what you have to pay attention to is those credit cards. When you're splitting your income onto those credit cards and you're splitting your expenses, my point was, if you have a credit card and you're going to put all of your gas on one card, all of your groceries on another card, and all of your utilities on a third card, let's say, right? So whatever payments you put on those cards, you have to make sure that your income that comes into that card is going to well exceed what the payment that you're making, okay? So that the amount of money that you're putting on that card. So you're going to have to divide out your expenses and your income per card to make that work, right? Okay? So you need to know the total income, available income that you have, and the total chargeable expenses that you had and you'll have to divide them out by those cards. So if I didn't make that clear, then I want to make sure that I make that clear today, okay? So today I really want to go over debt to income with you guys, and good debt versus bad debt, and how to determine what good debt is and what bad debt is, because it all matters when it comes down to velocity banking and how you're working your strategy. Remember, you have to start somewhere, right? And if you don't start, if you continue to do your banking through the traditional banking ways, which I used to do, then you're never going to get ahead. Velocity banking offers us a solution so that we can pay down our debts and we can get ahead by releasing cash flow within the system, right? Within that strategy, the pay down strategy. Now, something that, and a lot of people will say, well, I just don't know where to start. Well, start small and start somewhere. So one of the YouTube channels that I pay attention to is a channel called Not Your Average Finance Guy. You guys go look it up. He does an excellent job with, bringing solutions. And I think, all of these newer channels out there, these people have some talent. And so he made a point. He said, I may not do things perfectly, or you may not do things perfectly. And if you don't know where to start somewhere, okay? His example was, he had a guy that, wanted to sell his car. And so the first thing the guy's like, well, I don't know where to start, but I need to wash my car because it's dirty, right? Again, start small, start somewhere. So if it's one card you need to start with and that you need to work all your finances through, then start there. And that's actually coming to play in this strategy that I'm going to show you today. Now, I am running a hypothetical for her because she gave me, she didn't give me her finances, but she gave me her situation. So I'm going to apply it today with debt to income, okay? And how that can, affect you in trying to get a line of credit. But right now, I do want to go over our good debt versus bad debt, okay? And so what is good debt? So, everybody looks at their debt and they're like, well, all debt is bad. You shouldn't have any debt that's bad. Well, that's not necessarily the case, okay? So a good debt is a debt you take on that will help you achieve your financial goals, okay? All right, so what the heck does that mean, Jen? Well, let's look at it. If we take good debts, right, and we take our bad debts, all right? So good debts might be your credit cards with points or rewards. Those are good debts, right? If you are paying on your credit cards and you're getting rewards back for that, you're getting some kind of cash or incentive back, that can be a good debt, all right? So that could be a good debt. Conversely, a bad debt might be pay down loans, right? So sometimes these pay down loans can charge us up to 300%. So if you guys are scraping by and you're not able to make it to the next paycheck, something's got to give. Well, what happens is a lot of you will go to these paycheck loans, these payday loans, and you'll go ahead and you'll do an advance on your paycheck. And guess what, man? They're going to charge you for that, and it hurts. So you have to be careful of that, okay? So that would be an example of a bad debt. All right, so let's swing over here. A good debt. Now, a mortgage. A mortgage could be a good debt. And I know you guys are out there going, Jen, you don't like mortgages. You say that all the time. Well, they're useful though, right? And sometimes we need mortgages to start our journey, okay? If you guys want to own your own home, if you want to own something, and at the end of the day, that mortgage, if you pay it off and you pay it off faster, right? That's an asset to you. Your home is an asset. And eventually, you're going to go sell that. So that might be extra money you make in your pocket if you run it smart, right? If you do the velocity way and if you do the pay down way. So the mortgage, it could be a good debt. So if you do not refinance it and have a plan, right, that's being executed, a plan to pay it down faster, that could be a good debt, all right? So I'm not all down on the mortgage industry, so don't think that. I just don't want to see you guys throwing money away, paying for 2 houses when you only get one. That's what I want you to avoid, okay? Now, a bad debt might be something like debt for vacation or debt for new clothes. You know, like if you're going to the store and you're getting these store cards, and yes, you get a percentage, off of your clothing when you use these store cards. But here's the problem. If you continue to make purchases on those store cards and you're not able to pay it down and pay it off, you're accumulating bad debt. You have clothes to wear. They might not be the newest, but you have them to wear, don't you? Right? So think about it in terms of that. That might be a bad debt too. Okay. Again, a vacation, getting yourself into debt to go on vacation isn't always a smart thing to do. Now, could you maybe finance it if you aren't in debt and you want to finance it through a line of credit? Sure. If you can make those payments and pay it off really quickly using the velocity way, absolutely. Then go ahead and do it. But if you can't, don't go on that vacation. Sometimes we have to be a little bit frugal. Not a lot, right? Just a little bit frugal. All right. So another example of a good debt could be loans or lines for real estate that you already have tenants for. Okay. What on earth does that mean? So, Dan and I were talking about this, right? Okay. And it's kind of funny because he's like, well, how in the world do you get tenants? If you're buying a real estate or commercial property, how do you get tenants before you have the property? What do you do? Go to people and say, oh, hey, by the way, I've got this property. If you want to, come over, I'll go ahead and get it for you. And then it's going to take, a month and a half or 2 months, right? That seems ridiculous. However, if you guys have read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about this. He talks about, getting tenants prior to owning a property. A good example of this is a college town. Maybe you purchase a house in a college town and you get a good price for the home and you get a good mortgage rate, and you know that you can charge tenants, right? You can charge students to live there because a lot of times there are a bunch of students living together and you can make some money on that. So that might be a good debt. Okay, so that one could be a good debt. All right, so let's swing over here now and talk about uncontrolled credit card spending. Obviously, that's a bad debt, right? So you don't want to have credit cards where you're uncontrollably spending money. That would be a bad debt. Another bad debt are high interest credit cards that are carrying balances. Again, it goes into carrying balances on these cards where that can be detrimental to you. All right. Okay. So now, I really want to go into debt to income ratio and understanding that, because there's a lot of people out there that don't exactly understand how debt to income is important to you, okay? It's very important when you talk about mortgages, okay? So if you have a mortgage or you are going to obtain a mortgage, they're going to look at something called your debt to income ratio. And usually that debt to income ratio, they want to see it below 45%, okay? And that is harder and harder. We see that, less and less often now because we are in a credit crisis, right? We're in a credit crunch. And, it's harder. There's so many more people out there that are experiencing lots of payments. And with those payments, obviously comes debt. And so a lot of times we're looking at at high DTIs, and we need to do something. We need to have a strategy to get those down. And in this woman's case where she, brought it and she said, I can't get a line of credit. I want to, but I have a 780 credit score and my credit union won't give it to me. And my first thought was, and I can't say this for sure, okay, if that's her situation, but to me, it makes sense. Her DTI is out of whack, okay? And she's talking about a loan / line of credit. So they look at those and they're going to look at your debt to income when you try to get any kind of loan like that, okay? So that is more than likely what she's dealing with, and I want to show you a way around that, okay? So back to, though, debt to income ratio, and what is it and how do you figure it? Well, obviously debt to income is the debts that you have versus the income that's coming in, right? So that is your debt to income ratio. Now, that is figured on your total monthly debts, okay? Not including your utilities, your phone bills, all of that stuff, right? Your groceries, your gas, none of that. It's strictly based on your debt payments, okay? So credit cards and loans and lines, those kinds of things. So it is the total monthly debts that you have divided by your gross monthly income, okay? So it's going to be that divided by your gross monthly income, then the percentage you multiply by 100, okay? So total monthly debt over your gross monthly income. And I know that seems counterintuitive to some of you. You would think you would do it by net, but they do not calculate it by net. They calculate it by your gross monthly income, okay? And then because I forgot it here, I'm going to say times 100, and that will give you your actual percentage. Okay, so a standard DTI, again, to obtain a loan is 45% or less, all right? So here is my example, and this is the example that I'm going to carry through with my strategy, okay? So this is my example for you. Now, if you have, let's say, $2,700 is your total monthly debts, okay? Again, not including all of your expenses, which are going to be the others like groceries, gas, utilities, phone bills, all that stuff, okay? So if the total monthly debts are $2,700, and then you divide it by your gross income, and let's say the gross income is $5,800, okay? And you can get that on your paycheck. Your paycheck will tell you what your gross is, okay? And so will your W-9 at the end of the year, so you'll have an idea. So if you take 27 and you divide it by 2,700, divided by 5,800, you're going to come up with a 0.465, and you're going to multiply that by 100. And so that means your approximate DTI is 47%, okay? It's a bit high, and it's a bit high for trying to obtain a loan, okay, or a line of credit. And so again, I know no loans, only lines, right? I get it, but we're just talking about DTI in general here. So if it's approximately 45%, and again, I'm rounding up, right? Because we've got 0.465, I'm taking that 5 and flipping it up, rounding to get me at 47%, all right? Now, what we need to do is we need to find a way to lower those payments so that my DTI is back in line, right? So if my DTI is back in line, probably I'm going to have a better chance of getting this under control, right? And being able to then get a line of credit, all right? So if I have 2480, okay, if I can lower it to 2480 from the 27, okay, so if I can lower my payment some, all right, and what is that? So if we take, sorry, told you, I'm not the mathematician, it's Dan. So Dan is my mathematician over here, minus 2480. That means I have to drop it by 220, okay? So if I have to drop my payment by 220, I've got to figure something out. So what I do then is, when we're going to talk about that in just a second, but anyway, 2480 divided by 5,800 equals 0.427, okay? And if you multiply that by 100, now our DTI is in line, right? Now we might be able to do something with that, especially if you have a 780 credit score, which is pretty darn good, right? We're okay with that. That's great. So if we can get our DTI in line, then we have some possibilities here. Now, again, at 47, we put an X here because that's not going to work for us. But at 43, we have some room to work, right? So there's a couple different ways you can do that, right? One of the ways could be you could drop your interest rates, right? And if you drop your interest rates, that could help some. Now, it's not going to help entirely unless you do something a little bit different with dropping the interest rates. And let me explain that. So let's say you're in a situation like this woman is, okay? And again, I'm running a hypothetical scenario here just to give you guys an idea. And now I'm using her income of 5,600, and when we work with income, we're working with net. So I'm just saying here that I'm just saying her monthly gross is 5,800. That's probably not right, but I'm just giving you an example, okay? So let's say her income is 5,600 and her total expenses are $5,400. That means she's got some cash flow, right? So doing okay, we got some cash flow. Again, you have something happen though. We know that things can go south pretty quickly, and 200 is not a lot, but we can work with it, all right? So let's say she has a mortgage, and that mortgage is at $1,150, so $1,150 a month. And a car payment here is at $470 a month. So the car payment is $470 and our mortgage is $1,150, okay? Let's say she's got credit card one, and I didn't obviously put what credit card companies are on there because it's a hypothetical, okay? So credit card one, let's say it's at $12,000, and I'm just using round numbers. So $12,000, we know a payment on that is going to be about $360. Now, let me explain something to you guys about those payments and how credit cards figure the payments, because that's going to come into play when we talk about what strategy we're going to use. Credit card companies will either charge you 2% of the outstanding balance, or they charge you 1% plus the interest on that total amount, okay? And a lot of times I see it as 1% plus the interest, okay? But it can vary from card to card, but you're usually dealing with 1% or 1% plus the interest or 2%, all right? So in this situation, I'm running 1% plus the interest, okay? All of these cards too, I should say that I'm doing this at, okay, a 24% credit card, okay? The credit cards are all 24%. I just ran it at a flat 24%. So if we have a credit card here for $12,000, and you know what? I missed a zero, my bad, because that wouldn't make any sense, would it? All right, so let's say this is, sorry guys, I apologize. Good thing I caught it. All right, so let's say it's 12,000. Okay, so that credit card is 12,000, and now I have Expo all over my fingers. All right, $12,000 credit card, and the monthly payment on that is $360. Okay, and if you pay this back at over a 5-year period of time to get this card paid off, it's going to be $10,000. Okay, so $10,574. Okay, that's what it would cost to run this out, to run that to term. Credit card 2 is 13. I did it again, you guys. Wow. So 13,000, my bad, 13,000 a dollar credit card. So that's the balance on the credit card. Now, these are all at their limits, right? Okay, they're at their limits. So this is 13,000. The payment on that is going to be $390 and it's going to take 4.8 years to pay that back. Again, the 1% plus your interest. Okay. And so that means it's $8,600, okay, $8,636 to be exact is what it would cost them to run this to term on a $13,000 balance. Credit card 3, $6,000 balance. The payment is $180, and it's at a 4.9 years to pay it back to run to term, and it's at $39.86 to pay it back, okay? Credit card 4, $3,000, $90 payment on that. It's 4.9 years to pay that back, and you're going to spend $1,993. Credit card 5, okay, we've got $2,000. It's at a $60 payment a month, 4.8 years to pay that back, and $1,329 would be the amount you would if you let it go to term. So that means your $26,000, $26,518 to be exact, is what you're going to pay for these debts that are right now. The total balance is $36,000. That's a heck of a lot of money. All right, that's a lot of money. You don't feel it right now though, right? Because to you, you haven't paid any of that. That's like paper clips. It's not real to you. When I was a banker and a branch manager, right? People would say to me, "What? Oh my gosh, isn't it like what do you do about all that money? Isn't it tempting?" And I said, "No. That money to me is like paper clips. It's like it's not real, right?" So you have to look at it. Right now you're looking at that interest is not real to you. That interest charge, or what you'd be charged for that on that interest rate, it isn't real to you at this point, right? So you're not feeling it, but you will pay it, okay? And that's why this is important, and that's why velocity banking is important, because you will pay this. So for $36,000 in debt, you're going to pay $26,518. Okay. Your total monthly payments are $2,700 for the debts. Now, like I said over here, $2,700 is is your debt payment, right? Okay, so this matches, and that means that her DTI is out of whack. Now, I think it was Becky. I think her name is Becky. Becky, if I have your name wrong, I apologize, but I will message you about this so you can see what we're doing here. Okay, so with a credit score of 780, okay, she has a good credit score, but she can't, due to her DTI, probably cannot get a line of credit, a personal line of credit because of the DTI. All right. So, but what she could get is a credit card, right? Because credit card, they don't necessarily calculate your DTI for that. They're going to look at your score. They are going to look at your credit score. They're going to look at your income, and they're going to look at your credit utilization. So I have that listed here. So for a 0% interest card, let's say that's what she wants to do, right? We're going to look at your income, your credit utilization, and your credit score. All right. So what's my plan here? Where am I going with this? Remember, start small. But what's my plan? My plan is this. We know that her payments, okay, so this 180, okay, so let's look at this. So if we've got our payment is 180 plus 90 plus 60 equals, all right, 330, if you guys can see that. So 330. Now we know that we have to drop it by 220 to get in line. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to do it? All right. Here's how we're going to do it. So when you go get a zero balance card, I want you, if you're looking to drop your DTI, the first thing you need to know is not just, yay, I got a credit card that's at 0%. I can move these balances over because I want to attack these balances and I want to get her $11,000 on a new card that she can transfer this $11,000 over to. Okay. But here's the kicker. So you have to make a payment, even though it's at a 0%, even though your card is at 0%, you still have to make a payment, right? So you have to make a payment every month on that card. Some of the cards will charge 1% as your payback amount. Some will charge 3%. So you need to ask and find out before you apply for that credit card what the payback amount is going to be, what percentage, because this will not work for her if it is 3%, but it will work for her if it's 1%. And I have plenty of 1% cards out there that I know of. Okay, so she could do this. If it's 1%, we got it. We're golden because at $110, okay, so that's what this would be. So if I pay these off, all right, and the 0% interest balance transfer, you got to remember though that there's going to be that 4%, it would be the high, anywhere from 2% to 4% balance transfer fee. Okay, so you're going to have a balance transfer fee, but if we get a card for 0% for 18 months, and it's at $110 a month. Okay, so let's say, is that backwards? I wrote that really weird. Okay, so $110. Let's say that's what the payment is going to be, and that's our goal, right? So right here, she must find a zero balance transfer card that charges only 1%, not 3%, of the total balance. So her payment is $110. So if we do that, these payments then get wiped out. Okay, right? These payments get, oops, not the $390. We need that one still. All right, $390 is still here. So these payments here get wiped out, and now we're charged $110 for that. All right, so guess what? Our DTI is now in line, and she then, at this point, can go and try to get her personal line of credit. But we're going to wait. We're not going to go do it immediately. We're going to wait a little bit because she just did a credit check to try to get that personal line of credit. They said no. So now we need to wait a little bit, okay? She could if she really wants to, but if we wait, give it some time, here's my strategy then. Here's how I'm going to work it. Because remember, velocity banking is how we do things here around here. We don't traditionally bank anymore because traditionally banking is how you end up payment poor over and over and over again. We're changing our mindset, right? We are changing our mindset. We're changing how we're doing things, and we're going to run things the velocity way. So let's say she decides while she waits, she's going to run things using velocity banking, all right? And that's what she does. So now we know that these payments here are $110 now because we've moved this debt into $11,000 0% credit card that's going to charge us $110 a month. So what we have to do then is we have to calculate our available income and our chargeable expenses, okay, because we're working things through a credit card. So the available income is going to be 3510, okay, available income. Remember, you have to hold out anything that you cannot charge through a credit card. Cannot charge your mortgage, you cannot charge your car, you cannot charge credit card 1, you cannot charge, well, we can skip credit card 2 because that's going to be our debt destroyer. You cannot charge the $110. You can't charge that either, all right? So you have to subtract those payments out of your income because you have to hold them back and pay them through your credit card. Now, this 390 comes back to us, right? It comes back into our income because we're no longer having to hold it out or pay it through our checking account because it's going to come back as cash flow. All right. So that's where I'm getting the 3510. So 3510 is my available income. Now, the expenses, right? We still have these expenses. We still have our mortgage, our car. We still have our credit card 1. We still have our credit card here at 390. It's still an expense to us, okay? We are getting that back in our income. We're allowing our income back because we're including it in our income now to pay this card. But it's still an expense to us, just as this is an expense to us at 110. So all of that has to come out of our expenses, and what's left are the chargeable expenses, okay? So what's left pretty much is going to be utilities, phone, any money you put aside for yourself or, whatever you want to do with it, all that, any of that stuff, your groceries, your gas, all those together would be kind of the remainder of the going inside of the non-charge or the chargeable expenses, because right now we need to work with chargeable expenses. So our chargeable expenses are $29.20, and our interest then for this card, remember, I worked them all at 24%. So our interest is going to be $220. How did I figure that? Okay, because the beautiful thing about lines of credit versus loans, lines of credit are calculated on an average daily balance. So that means when your income goes into that card, and now mind you, she might be micropaying. Side note, sorry, tangent. So when her income comes into her credit card, okay, so she's making a payment of her income into her credit card that's available to her. Remember, the available income. The rest we have to hold back and pay through our checking account. Income comes in, right? It's going to drop your balance to the $994.90, which means for that day, your average daily balance is going to be considerably less than it was by $300 or $3,510. So the bank will then average it out for that statement period, and that's the interest you're charged. Okay, so we have to give you an estimate because we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. So we do an estimate here to get as close as we can. So we take our high balance, which is 13, and holy crap, you guys, I did it one more time. I was thinking 1,300, obviously. Sorry, it's 13,000. Super funny that I did this though. Okay, so 13,000, right, is our starting balance. 13,000 is our starting balance. So we know that that's the high balance. This is the low balance, the $9,490. You add them together to get your average, right? You add them together, you're going to divide by 2. That's the average. That average then is going to be multiplied by 0.24, okay? Because I said it was 24% interest, so you multiply by 0.24. The 0.24 then is going to be multiplied by the average, which that number you're going to get is going to give you your year's worth of interest for that card at that amount, okay? At that average amount. Then you divide it by 12 because we only want 1 month, because we know our interest is going to continuously drop. Okay, so it's always going to be changing at this point. It's always going to be lower because we're lowering it every month using the velocity strategy, and it's going to go faster because we're making those chunk payments, okay? Now, again, micropaying, chunk payments over the month, right? Or little payments over the month will end up with a chunk payment, but it doesn't look like that to the algorithm. So that's why we cheat it, okay? All right, so now we've got our balance that we're working with after we put in our income. And we know our expenses still we're putting on the card, plus our interest has to be put on the card. So now we're at $12,634. Next month, we're doing it again. That income comes in, 3510 comes in, drops our balance to 9124. We're going to average it, divide by, add the high, add the low, divide by 2, get our average, multiply by 0.24. Then we're going to divide that by 12, which gives us 217, okay? So After we add those expenses back in, we're at 12,261, but you can see we've already dropped it considerably in 2 months worth of time. So you continue to run your strategy, you continue to run it down, all right? So what does this look like then for her? Now, remember, she's only working with one card here. And at some point, she will end up applying for that line of credit. She's going to rest it for a few, let her credit score recover a little bit from being tapped. They tap it and say, you can't do it. Your DTI is out of whack. So we're gonna run it for a little while. So let's say we run it to term. Let's go to term on this. So we run it to term. Okay. So what does that look like? It takes us then to pay off this card. Okay, the $13,000. It takes us 22 months, so under 2 years. And we are charged $2,998 in interest. That is a far cry from the $86.36 that we would have been charged had we let it run to term. This is the power of velocity banking right here. One step at a time. If you only work with one card, like Mr. Knott says, right? If we only work with one card, you're still saving a heck of a lot of money, aren't you? I will take $56.38 every day of the week. You want to give that back to me? I'll take it, right? And so will she. So she saved $56.38 on just this card alone. Okay. And she's also, what else has she done though? She's halted the interest from consolidating these onto that $11,000 card. So she's halted the interest in the meantime. Now, she can do this for 18 months, and she's also still making $110 payments in that time, the 22 months. So however she wants to run this strategy from this point on, she can, right? So she could then decide to take it over with her personal line of credit that she gets, because maybe this card then goes to 21%, but a personal line of credit for her is going to be at, maybe it'll be at 13%, 12%, 11%, whatever, right? That's going to be less than 21%. So maybe she decides to flip it and put it on that personal line of credit at that point, and then runs a velocity banking strategy with that. Viable option, because it'll be at the 18 months, it should be under 1,100, right? Or 11,000. So if she got a personal line for 10,000, she could easily do that. No problem. Okay. Easily. So it all just depends on you and what you want to do and how you want your finances to look at the end of the day. I will take velocity banking over traditionally banking any day of the week. Once I learned it, I never went back. Here's the thing. When you learn to run your finances this way, you find that you are no longer payment poor. You are no longer stressed out. You no longer feel like you're out of control, because you are in control. And some of you, for the first time in your life, you're in control of your finances, just like I felt that for the first time in my life when I realized how to do velocity banking. Just like Dan came to me and said, this is a shell game when I brought it to him. And then he realized, no, it's not. It's not a shell game at all, you guys. Rearranging where you put your money is all you need to do to free yourself, okay? To free yourself. Now, not everybody has the situation that she does, right? So not everybody has a 780 credit score. If you don't, that's okay. You can still run your strategy, velocity banking, using one card at a time and run it down. Have an awesome day, you guys. Thank you so much for paying attention, and thank you all for your questions and your comments. And call me out. Like I'm not perfect. I absolutely am not perfect. I can tell you 100% this works. But if I do a crap job explaining, then let me know so I can correct it and try to explain it to you in a different way. We all explain things differently. And so somebody might listen to me and then go and listen to somebody else, and that person makes more sense to them, or vice versa, right? So just learn velocity banking and save yourself a whole lot of stress and a whole lot of anxiety. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.